Our latest big conversation here on the Counterattack, head coach of the Fordham Rams, joining us from the Bronx, I believe. Brian Bacharach, how are you?
That's right. Head out to California in about 2 days, 3 days.
All right. Well, I think water polo fans are excited about the Rams heading west. You have a pretty daunting
So are we.
schedule.
Yeah.
A lot of top teams. You've got Cal, Stanford, Long Beach State, just to name a few. How are you and the guys gearing up for a pretty heavy schedule once you come to California?
Well, we've been training hard for a better part of 6 weeks now. We backed off a little bit to get ready for Princeton, and we backed off to get ready for GW and Navy. But for the most part, we've been pushing the guys hard, and they have really responded. We've got a very young group. I think I counted it at one point. It's like 16 or so of our 23 guys are in their first or second year in the program, which is, you start to go through training ups and downs like what these guys have faced. But it just, I think, when you're young, you kind of don't know, you don't totally understand or know what's on the other side. And so it's taken some motivation in terms of um, that side of things, and us having to try some different things than we usually do. Um, but I think for the most part, the guys have really responded, and in all fairness, we created a schedule, this way on purpose. We wanted some dedicated training periods, um, knowing that we had a young group and knowing that we were going to, have some challenges in the first half of the year, have a few weeks where we could just focus on ourselves and getting better, and then being able to just figure out, where we needed to improve and get better in those areas, and then we'll have another test when we get out there in California. So, it was by design, but at the same time, when you have a young group, you never really know totally what you're going to get day to day and week to week. So,
You mentioned the schedule, and I talked with you before the NCAAs last year, and obviously amazing season, undefeated going into the postseason. I think the one question everyone had, well, they didn't get a chance to play X, Y, and Z. Right? I think the highest rated team you played last year was Pacific. We've discussed this. I don't think, not for a lack of trying, right, to kind of get those other teams on your schedule, but how much was that on the
yeah, I
line
mean,
on
look,
this year's schedule to say, like, UCLA, Cal, like, we want to make sure we play the very best teams that we can?
yeah, last year no one came east of those four, which was unfortunate. We would have definitely, I think, faced off with one of them if they had come east. And whatever the reasons are, we didn't get any of them on our schedule last year. Yes, we did try, but I, I, I don't know why it didn't work out. It just didn't. Yeah, those things happen. I think, it seemed to me that, based on the year that we had last year, and I think also the fact that we were able to earn a 3 seed over Stanford, um, going into the NCAA tournament, um, you know, the MPSF teams wanted to make a concerted effort to play us, and whether it's a win or a loss on either side, it's being settled in the water. It's not going to be based on RPIs or relative common opponents. Well, you guys beat these guys by 2 points or 2 goals, and we beat them by 1 goal. That kind of stuff. Like, it doesn't come down to a feel this year. It's going to come down to actually having played in the water, which I think everyone wants. We wanted it. I think they wanted it. I I don't think it's a surprise for anyone to hear that we surprised people last year, and so I don't know that everyone felt the need to make to play us in a game. For whatever reason, if it didn't work out for their schedule, I don't think it really had ever affected them. And that would be the case if you look at the 50 years of our history. So, we came a little bit, I didn't think we came out of nowhere. I knew what we were building. I knew what we were developing. I saw how good we were at the end of 2023. Um, no one else, at the top, I would say, levels of the game really were paying that close attention. We were, I don't know, 15th, maybe 13th in the country. And it was because, from my perspective, we never really got the opportunity when I felt like everything clicked in 2023 to play those teams numbers 5 through 13, or so to speak. And we did play them earlier in the year, but like by November-ish of 2023, I really felt like that group of seniors and juniors in that group had figured everything out. And we're just playing at such a high level of water polo. And then we faced in that NCAA tournament, not the number one team at the time, but the national champions in Cal. And it went how it went, and so it felt very anticlimactic, because I felt like we had put so much work and effort and into getting to the level that we wanted to and could, that it just carried over into 2024, and that spring was one of the best springs we've ever had. We were just playing at just we just carried it over. It was just such a high level, and then we added, some really great additions to that 2024 roster, and so, it was one of those things that it wasn't a surprise to me, but I think it was a surprise to everyone else, and so the I think the result of that, for a long-winded way of answering your question, is that I don't think that people are looking past us anymore. And from a scheduling standpoint, or when we're on their schedule and preparing for them. So good for us for earning that, respect, so to speak, or just, I think we've earned it, and so it's exciting, to get these opportunities to play against, the Cals and the Stanfords and the UCLAs, and for that matter, Long Beach and San Jose State. I think they both went out of their way to make sure that we were on their schedule, and I don't think that was an accident either. So we're excited about our California trip. I might have overdone it a little bit, but it's
Well, yeah,
we're definitely excited
you're
about it.
about to find out, right? That's for sure. But
Yeah.
you mentioned the roster and the new pieces, right? And you think back to last year's team, you did lose some veterans. I think about goalie, but some other spots as well. For fans that are maybe just going to start dialing into what Fordham is doing now as we're getting to the stretch run here, how have you gone about replacing some of those key pieces? Who are some of the guys that have stepped in and stepped up?
Yeah, you never completely, replace guys, and that's the beauty of building a program, is that, they left their mark, and it's different. It's always different. Every team's got its own dynamic. Every team, you I think you need to be, trying to maximize the talent that you have, and not necessarily, forming it to what you want, but forming it to what is best with the talent that, we were able to bring in. So, um, with that said, guys that have stepped up, I think that we had, Alessandro Salapante come in this year, a lefty that, has helped us a lot. Diego Tressa, another freshman that is helping us a lot. Marco Napolitano is playing a much bigger role than he did last year. He got to play the National League for Nyack last year, and I think that really helped elevate his game in the off season. Andras Toth is was already an All-American, but I think he's taken another step this year. The Mark Duke has stepped in as a 2 meter defender for us. So a lot of different guys that have come in and filled very important roles for us. And those guys are still developing. Yeah, they're a month and a half into their college careers. I guess 2 months if you count preseason stuff. It's still very early for them, and they're replacing guys like James Oroskovich, who, was a I think a sixth year senior, as because he redshirted and had a COVID year. Um, that came to us from Santa Barbara last year as a center. Like, we were talking about an 18-year-old versus a 23-year-old, 24-year-old. It's a big difference. And there's a lot of examples of how we're trying to do that, and guys who have so it's not the same group, but you have to. That's the beauty of college athletics, is you're constantly bringing in new guys, and that's the fun of it, developing them, and seeing how they can do, and seeing how that group molds together.
To that end, right? You mentioned some of the key pieces that returned. I think one of the testaments to what you've tried to build there is that, yes, you lost guys to eligibility or graduation, right? But you were able to otherwise keep your group intact. And this is across all sports become the era of player movement. For you and your
Yeah,
staff, what does it mean to be able to have all the guys want to recommit and not, you were steps away from a championship final. They all bought back in again for another year.
yeah. Um, there has been some movement, I guess, in the portal. Cal picked up some great talents. I know Long Beach did as well. And it hasn't affected us quite as much. Who knows, down the road if it will or not. I hope not, but we'll figure it out if we have to, and maybe it'll benefit us too. In terms of it, and we have benefited from some more grad student than transfers, but we've got 5 grad students on our team this year, so it definitely has benefited us in that respect. Um, I I don't think a ton about it in terms of guys coming and going. I think if you build a culture and a place um, that people enjoy being, and you're successful, you're going to continue to have retention, and that's what we really have. Regardless of the transfer portal or any of that stuff, that's just what I believe in. And we're doing a lot of things that extend beyond the pool to try to help our guys in the classroom and in life and whatever it might be. Um, and I think guys respond to that and want to be a part of that. And so I think that's just another extension of our culture. I also think that we're just a unique place. Kids love going when it's right for you to go to Fordham. People absolutely love this school, and they love going to school in New York City. They love the opportunities it presents. They love the professors that they're getting the opportunity to be taught by, uh, and I think they really enjoy being a part of our water polo program as well. Um, and that's not perfect or 100%, and but it is what we're striving for. So I don't know how else to to describe it and
Yeah.
why we've had the success of retaining people and the athletes, but I think they just enjoy being here, enjoy competing, and it's a cool place to go to school. I mean, we're right in the heart of New York City. We're a 10-minute train ride from Manhattan.
Yeah.
It's a great place.
Still a ways to go in this season, right? You have this trip, you have conference play, your conference tourney. I know the goal is to get back, obviously, to the NCAAs. Last year's run was epic. That match against USC, an all timer. What did you, a different team this year, but what did you learn from that run or from that game that maybe helps, maybe the emotion of the moment or the way the team played or preparation, anything you take from that you're like, hey, we're gonna adjust or adapt if we ever get in that situation again.
Well, yeah, obviously the goal is to get back into that situation. Um, the Yes, we've talked to our guys a lot about the emotion of that moment and controlling our emotions. There, I I think people made a lot bigger deal of that first quarter than I go back and watch it, and I don't see the craziness that everyone was talking about. Like it was, I think what surprised people the most was that our guys were wrestling back. They were
Mm,
as strong, as intense as everyone. I think a lot of people backed down to the Big Four, and our guys weren't afraid of that moment. And I think that surprised people. I don't know why. We had been doing it all year, but I guess we hadn't done it against those guys. Um, and uh, like so for me, it was we were just playing hard. I thought our first two game rolls and great game ejections were our guys just playing hard.
mm,
I didn't see our guy throw a punch at all in that first quarter. I just think they were playing physically, and so that from my standpoint, you know, if they're going to call it that way and roll guys for playing hard and physically, we got to keep recruiting depth because
yeah,
I don't know how else to control for it. um,
yeah,
that's my personal opinion on that game. But we did lose our emotions at some points later in the game, and it cost us dearly. And I think that was the result of what happened in the first quarter. We let it carry over into later into the game, and we did deserve some of the stuff that came to us in that end of the second quarter and whatnot. Where I was going with that was that we were definitely not perfect. Like I think there's a lot of things that we could have done differently. Uh, I could have handled differently. That the players could have handled differently. And that's why you play those tough games throughout the year. Like that was one of my frustrations and my inability to get those games scheduled in 2024 was that you learn from those moments and maybe you don't make those mistakes and maybe we have certain guys available to us in the third and fourth quarter um, that makes a difference and we don't maybe give up a few of the goals that we did or at least not so easily. All those things I definitely felt like I learned from, they learned from, and unfortunately, a lot of several of the guys that were a part of that have graduated. But at the same time, I think they're just lessons for our staff for going forward, and so we're learning from it and trying to continue to remind and improve on the lessons learned from that game and the whole NCAA tournament. I mean, I I it's funny, and I've talked to Andras and Luca as freshmen were two of the best. I think players out there. Luca was a first team All American. Andras was a second or third team. Uh, and they missed some shots, and we've talked to them a lot about this. But in those big moments, um, but from my perspective, I could have done some things differently, subbing and coaching wise. In looking back, that might have helped them be a little less tired, to have a little bit more energy in those moments, and maybe not miss the shots that they did down the stretch there. And uh, I've done some things differently this year with them both, that I think is helping to allow them not just to be successful in that specific moment, but be successful in third and fourth quarters all year. And so we've been trying to implement that into everything that we do. That you have players like that you that are as talented as both of them are. You got to figure out how to get the most out of them in all situations.
The reaction, I think, from the casual water polo fan, the diehard, maybe the person that doesn't follow, was big. People were super excited about Fordham's run here. It's interesting. While Fordham might not have the history of NCAA championships in water polo, they have this great media history, and so a lot of journalists, people that are Fordham alums. I think Tony Reale was live tweeting the semifinal. What
yeah, he's a Fordham alum. So
from your perspective, when you maybe get home from California, just the response. I mean, you're getting blown up with a million texts. How did it feel to kind of take in all of that excitement around your team?
I think it goes to show that the sport really is hopeful for something different, and someone different, and just a different name, a different group coming in and disrupting what has been the case for the better part of 50 years. And so the both national and local and water polo community reception was incredible, and I was just happy to be a part of it. I mean, it was kind of funny, being taped during practices and having microphones on me and all that kind of stuff. It was a whole surreal experience. But like I said, great for the sport, great for our school. The university really got behind it, and good for our guys. Good for them. They earned it. As I took you through that history of 2023 it really started in 2021 with this group, and we kept adding more pieces, and it's just grown from there. But we won our first conference championship in the history of our program in 2021, and from there to 2024 and beyond, it happened pretty quickly. So quickly, but not so quickly.
Yeah, I was going to say it's been a journey.
Yeah.
Last question for you. People that read the story of Fordham and read your story last year, there was that great Wall Street Journal article and so many other features. If they hadn't read that, they might look at what has transpired with Fordham and said, classic story of Ryan Bacharach, great player in college, became a coach and has built this program up. It's what he must have always been dreaming of, right? But you kind of moved to the East Coast, not really expecting to be
a little bit of my
coach.
Story, so that's not true.
Exactly, right? But that's, I think, someone that didn't know you, right, just assumes this is kind of how the normal progression, but that's not your story at all. You kind of fall into being part of this Fordham staff, and then you become the head coach, and it's not, if we asked you 10 years ago, is this exactly where you thought you would be? I bet the answer would be no. And so when you come off a year like that and you have a good team once again, how do you kind of square this life you're living based off where you thought you might be 10 years ago?
Yeah, well, there was definitely some intentionality of where I'm at today. I remember when I was leaving, because I helped John Loughran as a volunteer assistant while I was at USC Business School, getting a master's an MBA and a master's in real estate development. So I helped him for those 2 years I was in business school. And I remember sitting with John and saying to him, I think I'd like to be a head coach someday. I don't know how. I don't I'm, obviously I've got a job, or I'm going into the real estate development world. But somehow I want to stay involved in the sport, and someday I'd like to figure out how I can get back. So I know that was in my head back then, but the path to getting there, like I had never really had Fordham much on my radar from a water polo destination for myself. But when I moved to New York, in 2012, it was the first and only time I've not been involved in a team as a player or as a coach for a fall in my entire adult life, high school life, like basically since I was a very little kid. Um, and so I started to research it, and the rest is history in terms of helping Bill and getting involved with the program. But what I will say is that even from that first moment that I joined a spring practice in 2013, um, there was an element to the kids, to the program, that just felt a little different to me than some of the other stuff I had seen on the East Coast. And whatever, there's a lot of different reasons why we were where we were at that point in time, but I just felt like every year we were making a step forward. The year before I showed up, the team had won 7 games. We doubled that the next year, and then I think we were 500 the year after that. Like, it just kind of kept getting, and we kept getting higher and higher profile recruits, and just felt like there was something new that just kept me wanting to continue to grind and keep moving forward. And so, did I expect that to ascend to a Final Four and where we were in 2024? I'd be lying if I said that was where I thought we would be. But at the same time, um, I still feel the same as I did 12 years ago, that like it feels like there's just other elements and pieces that just keep me going and keep me driving forward, and super excited about what I'm doing on a daily basis. So and so it's great. Like I think we have one of the most unique situations and opportunities in the sport, at least at the collegiate level at the moment. And I couldn't be more excited about what we're continuing to try to build as a program. So
Good stuff, Brian Bacharach, Fordham Rams. Good luck on the West Coast swing, and I have no doubt we'll see you down the road.
thank you. Go Rams.